feels almost as strange to me as it probably does to you, because I'm in a room with 3 cameras, a couple of lights, and a microphone, and 2 assistants who have nothing to do with flowers, but they are here to help me get through this. So I thank you very much for being patient and also inviting me to Riverside Garden Club. Having just heard the critiques of your designs, I think you've got some really fabulous designers. And some of these designs that I'm going to be doing today are intended to be easy and simple and using mechanics that maybe you haven't thought of before, that you have around your house. So really what I want to do today is be sure that you're using the plants and the flowers in your garden or your neighbor's gardens, and making designs that are easy. Now, what I'm going to do first is probably one of my favorite designs to do when I'm having people for dinner and I have no time to put flowers on the table, but everyone expects me to have flowers on the table, so I have to do something. So I can take any bowl. If you have a beautiful crystal bowl, that's even better. This one came from Goodwill and cost about $2. And I'm taking a pin holder. You don't need to use the pin holder, but it helps secure your flowers. So I'm putting that in here and I'm covering it with rocks. Now, all of us have favorite rocks, I think. My favorite rocks were stolen from the beach in Cape Cod. I'm not sure it's called stealing, but that's where they came from. And I normally would have used more of a fall colored themed rock, but it wouldn't have shown up quite as well on this black drape. And although I'm going to be talking about flowers you can use from your garden, these didn't come from my garden. They're absolutely gorgeous. They came from a wholesaler. Gerbers, of course, and they're very happy flowers. And if you happen to just have 1 or 2, you can simply put it into the pin holder or into the rocks, whatever you want to do. And be sure before, and I would have put water in here, but I don't want to get water all over my car on the way home. And then maybe put a second flower in here as well. And that's kind of boring to me, so I'm going to do a little something else. I'm going to take these lovely begonia leaves, which are on my plant that's now a little bit smaller, and put it into the rocks. Again, it's holding up the rocks are my mechanics, and I'm going to put one up this way. There's nothing that says you can't put something above your container, and in fact, I could even glue it to the outside of my container if I wanted to. Now, if I had it up like this, you would see this lovely kind of pinkish rustic side, and that's quite attractive. Unfortunately, they didn't give me an overhead camera, so you can't really get the full effect of this, but it's lovely on a table or on a coffee table. So this is fine, but if you've got a really large dining room table, you might want to do something a little bit bigger and showier. So what you do is you repeat the theme, okay? And this couldn't be any easier. 1 flower, rocks in here like that, okay? And it doesn't have to be symmetrical like this. One of the things of creative design is an asymmetric balance, so you can do that. Thinking outside the box is all what creative floral design is about. In fact, when I was sitting here earlier, I thought, gee, that might look kind of cool like that. Why not? I could take a couple more leaves and I could put them down here and still have a fairly nice, interesting centerpiece. Another thing you can do with your flowers, if they're a little too big, these are probably slightly out of scale with the container. They are out of scale with the container. There's a rule of thumb, which I've given to you on a handout, which was digitally sent to you or will be. And normally the rule of thumb is about 1/3 the size of the container is the size of the flower. So what I have done with these gorgeous, this is the gorgeous Gerber. I took the petals off of it. You can do that. There's no rule that says you can't make a flower smaller than it was to begin with. So that's what I did. I cut it down, and now I can put that in here. And it's a little more interesting. It's more in scale. I can put one of these leaves in here if I want to, etc. Okay, so we've done that, and if there's anyone out there who doesn't think they can do a design like this, ask your president for my phone number, and I will come give you a private lesson. So, moving right along, the next design, and this time I want it is also in a glass container, but you'll notice that it has kind of a curved in top. That's part of the mechanics. And in this design, I want to show you a new-ish mechanic. It's called U-glue, and it comes on strips, a very long strip, which I usually cut into pieces about this size. And what it is essentially double-sided glue. It's an industrial strength. It's very strong. And you can use it to glue almost anything to anything else. It's used a lot in creative design. I even use it in traditional design if a flower isn't behaving the way I want it to. In this design, I'd like the base of this to be down onto the bottom, and so I've put a little piece of tape on it. I'm also going to put some tape on the edge just in case I need it there. And the way you use this tape, the U-glue, is it has tabs on it. The tabs are always on the outer side. Sometimes I use a half a piece of tape. You can see I've cut these like this. The important thing about U-glue is to cut with scissors that are titanium so they don't stick. And also, when you take off the tab, you don't put your finger on here because you'll leave a fingerprint. So you'll put it on here. Remember where the tab is. You take the tab off, and the glue is left behind. I know you can't see that, but trust me, that's where it is. So we'll finish this design. This is from my yard. If I were in person, I would say to you, can anyone, I'll give a prize to whoever can tell me what this is. And I'm sure based on all the horticulturists that entered, you would be able to tell me that it's fothergilla. Fothergilla is one of our native plants. And in the fall, it's got this beautiful orangey, red, yellow kind of color to it. And it would be even prettier if we had it now. And I want to put it into my bowl. You could, instead of using the fothergilla, you could use curly willow. I have some leucothely down here I could use. And right now I'm trying to bend it a little bit so that it's a little more pliable and won't snap like that. When I teach workshops, I tell people that the technical term for what I just did, breaking it, is oh shit. And you can use that anytime and tell people that I told you it was okay to use. So we put this in here, and I don't want this perhaps to stay up quite that high, so I'm going to put it down here on my U-glue tabs. And it doesn't hurt the leaves. I've used it on with flowers. It doesn't hurt the flowers. There's probably a few too many leaves in here right now, but that's part of the problem of being on a camera like this. You can't fuss too much. And I want to put one more piece in here. Again, this is the mechanic. I'm going to put a couple of flowers in here, although I'll first put water if I were at home. When you're cutting anything, be sure you cut it on the diagonal. The reason for that is if you're going into oasis, it goes in more easily. I want this to be down here a little bit lower. If you're using oasis, you want it to go in easily. If you're in water, you don't want it to make a strong seal at the bottom. So now the flowers that I often use in this are tulips in the spring. If I'd been able to get calla lilies, I would have used calla lilies. I did have calla lilies in my garden, but they are gone by now. But sunflowers are great this time of year. You have to be sure that you take off all the leaves because they will yellow first. And also, if you're using oasis, you don't want leaves to go into the oasis. Now, what I could do with this is just put simply one sunflower like that, and it would be very nice. However, what my original plan was, and what I would do if I had tulips or calla lilies, is I would take them and I would bend them on the inside. So I'm substituting instead, these are from my garden finally, these are zinnias, and they're a really pretty apricot tangerine color. And the stem is pliable, so I can put it down, and pretty much what I'm going to do is lace that in between the sticks, the fothergilla. I wish I had taken some of the fothergilla leaves off and you could see this design more easily. This is where your imagination, I guess, has to come in. I brought the Japanese anemone along just because I thought that perhaps they would work, and they could have. It would be a totally different design. And what I'm trying to do here is just make something that's simple and easy. You don't have to do anything other than go out into your garden. And I've got one or two more of these little zinnias. And I think with this one, I'd like it to go on the outside of the container. And to make sure that it stays there, I'm going to use some of the U-glue. Again, I'm going to take one of the small tabs, pulling it from the outside, remembering where I've held on to it, because I don't want to put my finger onto the glue. One time I was in a flower show and the woman next to me was trying to use U-glue and it just wasn't working for her. And I said, well, show me what you're doing. And she said, well, I take the U-glue and I roll it into a little ball and then I stick it onto the container. And I said, well, that's the problem. You've got fingerprints all over that and it's not going to work. Now this is permanently adhered to the container. You could permanently adhere a large sunflower. You could adhere almost anything to anything else. I have tried it in large containers. Now, this really is an awful lot of leaves in here. Some of you probably knew that while I was putting it together. And what I'm showing you now is that sometimes if you've made, let's say, a tactical error, it's easier to go in and actually cut out the offending leaves as opposed to taking the whole thing out and then putting it back in. And maybe I would like just one more of these. I think this looks quite nice, kind of hanging over the container. And so probably what I would do if I were at home is I would put this in here, take off the brown leaves, and just have it hang over, and I would secure it with U-glue. Now, I've got to watch the time. I think I'm doing okay on time.
You're doing great. You have extra time, actually.
Okay.
And then Patty was wondering if you add anything into the water to make the flowers last longer.
I certainly do. I didn't for a long time. I'm very anti-chemicals and anything else. Our flowers are all organically grown. However, I saw a demonstration recently, and I've done it myself. Those little packets actually work. But you have to be very careful. Little packets sometimes are for 1 quart, sometimes they're for 2 quarts of water. Follow the directions exactly, because if you put too much into a quart, you end up with, you burn the flowers as opposed to saving the flowers. They do last longer that way. Okay, so I hope you got the idea of this. Had I been in person, I could ask, you could ask me questions and it would be a little bit easier, but maybe whenever I get there in real life to give you the workshop we were supposed to have.